Oh, I'll stand away from you.
Yeah, one.
Test.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You stay over there.
Okay. I think that sounds good. So, hello everybody. My name is Bram, and I'm the General Manager of Flanders Scientific. We're the global partner of Sungjung. And I'm just going to introduce you to some of the new models we have here at the show today, and also cover some of the features that you'll find in all of our monitors as well. So probably one of the more exciting things that we've introduced here at the show is this brand new 25-inch OLED monitor. It's the first Chinese-made OLED monitor available on the market. And of course, that's different from what we've previously offered, which has been strictly LCD monitors. So OLED has some distinct advantages over other display technologies, and the most important of those is the excellent contrast ratio. And the reason that you have very good low light levels or black performance on an OLED is because when you're showing black, you're basically showing no light whatsoever. And that's different from an LCD. An LCD, you always have a constant backlight source that you're trying to block the light. And when you do that, you always a little bit peeks through and gives you a little bit of glow in the low lights. So in a brighter environment like this, that's not as big a deal because you have a lot of reflected light off the screen. But if you were to get these monitors in a very dark color correction suite, OLED is going to have a pretty big advantage in that when you're feeding it black or dark images, you're going to get as pure a black as possible, whereas an LCD you're always going to get a little bit of a glow. So OLED has a few other advantages that make it very suitable for high-end color correction work and for color critical workflows. And among those is the fact that you have a very wide color gamut, which allows you to better emulate wide gamut color spaces like digital cinema. And probably the last kind of distinct advantage in terms of display performance that you get with an OLED is you get very, very fast pixel response time. The pixel response time is actually a fraction of a millisecond, whereas on an LCD monitor, even the best of those is about 6 milliseconds or more. So where that becomes advantageous is if you have very fast motion on screen, you get none of the ghosting that you sometimes see in LCD where you see like a trailing image. And so that's an advantage when you're dealing, again, with fast motion. Of course, some considerations for OLED is that it's more expensive and it requires more frequent calibration and things like that. So there's still definitely a very real place for LCD technology as well. So aside from this monitor, the other big announcement, literally big announcement, that we're making at the show is the introduction of our largest monitor yet. This is actually a 50-inch white LED backlight LCD monitor. So this is actually basically a larger format version of the 32-inch monitor that we introduced at NAB in April of this year. Same type of specifications. Among those, the fact that this is also a 3D capable monitor. And like all of the monitors in the lineup, all these units come with all the professional inputs you would need. So we have everything from 3 gigabit a second SDI, which is kind of the latest and greatest standard for inputs, all the way down to composite for older signal formats. So all the analog, you have component, you have composite, you have DVI, that's all standard. And one of the things that I really like about the monitor lineup in general is that whether you're getting the most affordable monitors that we make, which are like the BM210, all the way up to our top of the line units like this new CM250, you get basically the same features and you also get the same signal support. So we can even support very advanced formats like 12-bit signals and XYZ formatted signals, which again means that it's about as future-proof of a monitor as you can get. Anything that you can feed it, it essentially accepts, and that's very different from a lot of our competitors. So we also have one unit that new unit that I'm not showing right here, but it's right next door here, and that's basically a 17-inch version of the OLED as well. Same specifications, just a smaller monitor. Okay. So again, the monitors, besides supporting a bunch of different formats, they also can be used in a wide variety of applications. So we have customers worldwide who are using the units for field production, color correction, editing, production trucks, ENG, I mean, you name it, the monitors are suitable for just about any application. So, and I'll be touching on, in a separate presentation tomorrow, I'm going to be touching on color management, calibration, and those types of things in a little bit more detail. But one important point to make is that all of these monitors come professionally calibrated and have very advanced color management tools built in that ensure a color accurate image for whatever workflow you're dealing with. So that's kind of an introduction to what we've released. And now what I'd like to do is go over some of the features that you'll find in the monitors. And again, the great thing is that as I talk about the features that are on this 50-inch monitor, you'll find every single one of those features in the 25-inch and the 21-inch. It's just completely the same across the lineup. So I always like to start with something pretty basic, which is overlooked in a lot of other monitor design, in my opinion, and that is that we have a very logical menu structure, button layout, and the monitor is just incredibly easy to use. So among those things, you have dedicated input buttons, so you're not digging through a menu to switch inputs. You can hit at any time an input button and get an identification of the format. And that's actually something really useful because you get into these situations where you're feeding something from an editing system or a camera, and you say, well, I think I'm sending 1080p 30, but I'm not sure. The monitor always verifies for you. It tells you exactly what format you're actually feeding it, and that's a useful tool. So in this case, for example, we're feeding it 1080, progressive segmented frame, 2398, and that's just a piece of information a lot of other monitors don't give you. So, and then another thing that makes the monitor incredibly easy to use is that we have 5 dedicated function buttons, and those function buttons basically allow you to set whatever 5 features you're going to use most to a single button so you don't have to dig through a menu to turn something on. So for example, if I want to look at my waveform, it's one button, and that's all I have to press to have that turned on. So the way that we assign those is that we basically, again, have this very logical menu structure. And that menu structure, as you see, you have your 5 function position. So you just scroll to any particular function and you tell it what you want it to do. And that's what we have done here. Scopes and view meters 1 is assigned to F1. And when we press that button, that scope turns on.
所以很简单，你可以看到我在就是在第一个键上，我选完以后，我就可以在这个键里边设置我要设置成哪项功能，设置完以后，我就可以在这键上来使用这个功能了。
So let's take a quick look at some of the really useful scopes that are built in. One thing that we like to brag about is that we actually have 13 different scopes that work across all inputs, and that's way more than anybody else. So the most basic of which is just your standard waveform, which you can turn on, again, with one button press. There are many things you can do to customize that view. You can change where it's located on the screen. You'll see your waveform position here. So for example, this can be here, it can be here, it can be here. You can move it, the waveform, wherever it's convenient for you. And another really useful thing here is that we can actually change the scale of the waveform. So you have your waveform scale here. I can turn this into voltage. So now your scale's in voltage on the left-hand side. You can change it to IRE, which is the most popular use. So, and then what's really useful is this digital level indication. So this gives you an 8-bit scale instead of IRE. And where this is useful is if you're dealing with graphic artists who are coming from a computer background, they typically are much more familiar with digital levels, 16s black, 235s white, than they are with the concept of what is IRE. So I'm going to switch this back to IRE, and then I'm going to show you another scope. So the next one is vector scope, and there are a lot of monitors with vector scopes built in, but our vector scope tends to be a lot more detailed. You have these very detailed gradicules, And the other thing that you get is, again, it works across all inputs, and the gradical positions will change appropriately for HD or SD signals, because these reference points change a little bit depending on whether it's serial, digital, or standard definition or high definition video. And another really fantastic feature that we have on the vector scope is gain expansion. So you see this indication here, gain. We can go to standard gain times 1, gain times 2, and gain times 4. And what gain expansion is it's basically like zooming into your vector scope. And where that's useful is that if you're on set with a camera, you're shooting a test chart to set up your camera, a lot of these test charts from companies like Chroma Dumont require you to have a 2x gain setting to even be able to use that chart. So normally people would have to drag up these really expensive standalone vector scopes because most monitors don't have the ability to do that. With us, you don't have to do that. You have gain expansion built in, and it does a really, really great job. And aside from that scope, you have another very popular one, which is RGB Parade. So this is just your red, green, blue parade. And what I like about the way we've, and this is actually something we changed a couple of years back, is that we actually color code them, so they're very easy to see. And one really helpful additional thing that we do in all these scope modes is that you'll see that 0 and 100, that's basically your legal range. If you exceed this legal range, we'll highlight the signal in white. So it'll change from red to white, or green to white, or blue to white. So you see very easily on screen if you have a problematic signal. So same thing with your waveform, by the way. If you were to exceed it here, we actually highlight it in red, so it's very easy to see. So in addition to those scope modes, you'll see that there's a long list of additional scopes. The one that we just added right before the show started actually is this new Hue Vector. And if you haven't seen him yet, Alexis Van Herkman, who wrote the color correction handbook, has been doing presentations at the booth. And he's actually the gentleman who designed this, and from basically a colorist standpoint. But we think that people are going to find it very useful for field use as well. So I'll turn that on so we can take a look at what a Hue Vector scope. So a Hue Vector scope is kind of like the regular vector scope, but with a little bit clearer indications where your green, cyan, blue is because they're color-coded. But the really important thing about this vector scope that I think is so useful is this reference vector line. And you can actually move this anywhere you want on screen, so that if you have a particular color that you have to hit, or a target product color would be the common example. If you're shooting a TV commercial and they say this Coke can has to be this color of red, you can set it right there and you can make sure that that's happening. So aside from those, you also have, again, the RGB Parade, which we went over, GBR Parade, which is just the reverse. It's just different order, green, blue, red. And then RGB Overlay, which is something that if anybody uses Resolve, you'll see that this is also in DaVinci Resolve. So RGB Overlay is kind of like your parade with the 3 columns, but we spread it out so you have a better spatial representation. And the way that we show those individual channels is we actually color code them. So red is red on screen, green is green, blue is blue, and then the overlap is the corresponding secondary color. So going on from there, we also have YCDCR scope. So this is luminance, your CD, your CR channel. If you're dealing with a component signal, this can be a useful diagnostic tool. And then you also have your YCDCR overlay, which is kind of the same concept as RGB overlay, where we're actually color coding luminance is green, CD is blue, CR is red. And this is one that you don't see in too many other applications or in other monitors. And basically, it's your YRGB column mode. And I also like to call this sometimes YRGB peak. Because essentially what it's showing you is it's showing you the minimum to maximum range of luminance, red, green, and blue in the signal. And this scope is very useful in that it shows you a very quick way of seeing how much more of any particular channel, red, green, or blue, that you can push before you hit a legal level or limit. So aside from those, we also have a lot of histogram scopes. And what I like about the histogram scopes is that there are a lot of people who are photographers who are just now getting into video. And if you're using something like a 5D Mark II, you've never shot video before, chances are you're not going to understand how a waveform works. But you're already used to the histogram because it's been in your camera the whole time. And similarly, I won't spend too much time on these, but you also have color histogram and your and your RGB histogram, which you would also have in a lot of the newer DSLR cameras in the market. So apart from those, we also have a lot of audio-based scopes, for lack of a better word. So one of them is audio phase metering, where you can see if your audio is in phase or not. And the way that this works is based off of embedded audio on serial digital. You can select any two channels to see if they're in phase or not. Then you also have audio level meters, which can be across the top. So 16 channels of audio level meters, channel 1, 2, 3, 4, all 16 channels. And in this, you also get a specific dB reading, so it tells you exactly how loud it is at any given point. And we have the ability also to have those across the bottom and what we call our vertical audio level meters, just a different view of basically the same information. And one interesting diagnostic tool that we have here is that these channels are actually mute. If there were no audio being embedded, if, for example, channels 13 through 16 were missing instead of just mute, this would actually say no data. So those are basically all the scopes that are standard in the monitor. But scopes can only get you so far, and they show you kind of a limited amount of information. So one really popular thing that we have on here, especially for production use, is this exposure check mode. Yeah. So anything that would be overexposed will be shown in white, underexposed will be shown in black, and it's just a very easy way of seeing that. We also have an extremely advanced, what we call measurement feature. And what that measurement feature does for you is you can go to any pixel on screen. You can move this crosshair. It tells you where you are, your line and sample, and then it gives you the exact luminance, red, green, and blue values in a 10-bit range, and as a percentage, luminance, red, green, blue as a percentage. What you can also do is you can press an additional button here that sets a reference, and that's what we call a spatial and temporal reference. So it remembers that right when you hit it, it memorizes what that value was. So what you can do with this information now is you can play your footage forward, or you can pan your camera or whatever, and you can compare your current versus your reference, and it also gives you the exact difference between those values. And you can also use it on a static shot, like a frozen frame in post-production, and move this somewhere else, and measure any 2 points and compare those in a still shot as well. So a good real-world example of where this is useful is if you want to see how well a green screen shot was lit, you can measure the left, you can measure the right, and you can see the difference. And if that difference is close to 0, then you've got basically perfectly even lighting. And if it's way off from 0, then they did a bad job. So that's how those functions work. Now there's a lot of other things that are built into the monitor that can be really useful on a day-to-day basis. One of them that is probably one of our most exciting features is actually the sub-window mode. So what sub-window allows you to do is feed the monitor any 2 camera signals at the same time, and you can compare those to do color matching. And there's some other monitors that can do this, but what sets us apart is that we can do this not over just 2 serial digital, but we can compare serial digital and DVI, or serial digital and component. And that's something that most other people don't do. And the reason that this is useful is because a very common scenario is that you have your kind of high-end camera with serial digital output, and then your B camera is going to be like a DSLR. Okay. So you can feed it an HDMI signal and a serial digital signal and compare those on screen at the same time. And the last thing that makes this, the last thing that makes this unique is the fact that your signals don't even have to be the same frame rate and format. And that's something that I don't think anybody else in the market does. And so what this means is that you could have 1080i here and 720p here, or you could have P30 here and P24 here. And the monitor doesn't care. It'll show you both on screen anyways. Okay, so that's the sub-window mode. Now, we also have a lot, we have this, Something else that you'll see here, and I'm going to discuss this a little bit more in tomorrow's presentation, but we also have all these log monitoring modes, again, very useful in production environments. What this allows you to do is if you have a camera, especially a camera that maybe only has one serial digital output, if you're recording in log and outputting in log, the monitor can normalize that so that the footage doesn't look washed out. So we're always adding log monitoring modes, but we already have Canon log, S-log, S-log2, and Blackmagic film log. Okay, so moving on from there, you also have all the common kind of things that you would expect out of a professional monitor, like a blue-only mode, and then also monochrome, so you can do black and white. But we also have some advanced features. Let me see if the pixel zoom will work on here. Turn this on real quick, excuse me for just a second. Okay. So what this allows you to do is you can move this box anywhere on screen. There we go. And you can zoom in very, very high detail and see any section blown up. And what's interesting about this is that it's an artifact-free zoom. There's no artifacts generated.
What's artifact?
It would be like a jaggy or something that didn't look good. And the reason it's artifact-free is because one pixel always becomes an even number of other pixels, so there's really no interpolation going on. So another really useful set of features you'll find on the monitor is markers that you can have on screen. Now, a lot of other brands have various markers, and we have lots of markers to choose from. But we also offer a custom marker program where you can send us a BMP file showing exactly what you want on screen, and we can create a custom marker for your particular application. So here's a good example, is that Discovery Channel asks us to create this one. So what's useful about this is that if you work at a TV station, or if you work for a TV station providing a material, whether that's post or production, this allows you to make sure that you don't violate their protected areas, like their bug where they may have their logo, or their protected area here where any text has to be in this area. Okay, so we're running a little short on time, so I'm just going to go over some other basic things that are very useful. The monitor, like I said, comes completely calibrated, but also gives you the ability to quickly change settings without having to do another calibration. So for example, a big discussion in post-production communities around the world is what gamma response to use, because there's been not a lot of standardization. So here, it doesn't matter. Whatever environment you get put into, whatever gamma response is desired, you can instantly switch on the monitor to a different gamma response. So you'll see the difference here. When you go 1.8, it's a lot lighter. When you go to like a digital cinema gamma of 2.6, everything gets a lot darker. And the point is that the monitor allows you to do all this quickly, whereas with a lot of other monitors on the market, you have to completely recalibrate the monitor to switch even something as simple as gamma. So another thing that you'll see here on this menu is this anamorphic D-squeeze. And where this is useful is if you're using like an Alexa camera with anamorphic lenses, those have typically a D-squeeze mode built into the camera. But there are a lot of other cameras that don't. And if you don't have that D-squeeze and you're using that anamorphic setup, that can be really annoying because you're on set and everything looks squished and it doesn't look normal, and you don't really see what your footage looks like until you get to post-production. Our monitor allows you to fix that with this D-squeeze.
Does anamorphic only means that it's
not
16
for
by
SD,
9?
yeah, it's for HD anamorphic.
HD anamorphic.
Yeah,
So
it's like Alexa's a good example.
Just stretch
The image. To make
the
it look
image.
normal. So some other useful features you'll find built in are the ability to disembed time code from serial digital and show that on screen. And you can actually set that at different sizes as well. So and yeah, since we're running a little short, what I'll do is I'll just talk about the last thing that is useful on the monitor here, or something I think is very useful, is the ability to remotely control the monitor in a number of different ways. So you can do something as simple as contact closure via GPI. You can do the RS-232, RS-45 remote control, and that's all being shown on the far wall over here with the video control system. So I think since we're getting up to the time I think it's supposed to stop at, what I'll do is if anybody has any questions,
有没有人有什么问题的？你说呗。监视器以外的，最好是跟这最好有关的。你要有调色什么，他回答不了，对，要等的话，那个 Alexis 来以后才能回答。那
OK，
哎，有吗
？Good.
OK，
Thank you.